Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. It's old movies, sometimes classics, sometimes forgotten gems, sometimes just schlock, whatever we feel like. This one is going to be a first time watch for both of us. We watched The Big Heat, which is a Fritz Lang film from 1953, as a noir. And neither of us had seen this before, so we thought we'd give it a watch, and we'll just wait to talk about it. So we'll start off spoiler free for a little bit, just to give sort of general opinions, and then we'll start going into full spoilers to discuss it a bit more in depth. So that's what's going to happen. Connor,
Yes.
did you like The Big Heat?
For the most part, yeah, I did.
I liked it as well. I don't think it's Lang's best movie. Like I've
Mm,
definitely M's one that sticks out in my mind as his kind of like masterpiece, if you will. But
yeah.
as a noir, it plays into a lot of those tropes, and that's probably where the film isn't as interesting for me. That said, the direction is pretty great throughout most of it. It's got a darker edge to it where even if the violence is happening off screen, there's like implications of things happening that
Yeah.
are a bit more extreme than what I typically expect of films from this era. So
Yeah, it certainly manages to have a sense of horror to it at times like that, where it has that extra bite that you just don't really see at many else other films at this period.
yeah, so yeah, so it's about a cop who stumbles into a sort of conspiracy. There's a sort of a someone's trying to cover up a suicide.
Yeah.
He's not sure why, but as soon as he starts to investigate things, more people start to turn up dead, and it's clear that he is ruffling feathers. That someone high up is not
Yeah.
happy that he's looking into this, and it becomes more personal. And it becomes more. I think for me, what I think works really well, as much as it's really obvious, that it does really make me care about some of the characters early on.
Yeah.
Perhaps more so than I'm used to in movies like this, which is why I knew something bad was going to happen. but
You can call it almost
yeah,
to the scene.
but it did do it really well to the point where I'm like, oh man, they're really building character here,
Yeah.
and it really worked, and it meant the later events of the film had a bit more weight because I really cared about what was going on.
I agree, although at times that's to its detriment, where I feel like it does spend so much of the early stuff building character that when we get into the plot a little bit, towards the end, certain bits, it's like, well, it feels like it's missing a little bit of extra heart or something to go along with the character that we had.
What do you mean?
Well, like some of the events, it feels like some of the earlier character building isn't necessarily, it doesn't play into it as much. It's just there in the background. It's not as in the forefront as you'd expect for some of the events.
I'm not really sure if I get that complaint though, because to me it's just about us. We care more about what's going on with the main character later on in the film because of the events and because we had the heart in the first half.
Yeah,
So to me, it doesn't have to be at the forefront. I don't.
no, that's fair enough then.
For me, that was never an issue. I think for me, the reason why it's like a good film but not a great film is because once it does get to the plot and he's going to shake down people and he's going to investigate, the actual conspiracy is not that interesting. It's just kind of typical.
It is. It's just another noir, isn't it? At that point, I mean, it's well done, but it doesn't do anything special beyond that.
Now, the specialty definitely from the direction and the characters, because even some of the other characters are pretty well defined. Vince, who is like the sort of the main bad guy who we kind of encounter, he is very deplorable, and we sort of see hints of that throughout the film, and he kind of escalates as the movie goes on, and we see him do something truly horrific,
Yeah.
sort of down the line. And it kind of it suits him really well, and it builds and it builds, and in that sense, it works really well. It's just the actual plot of like, what is the conspiracy? Oh, it's just corrupt people paying off cops. It's like it's not really.
Yeah, it's as by the numbers as it could possibly be, really, in that sense.
But it's solid. It's never weak. It's always completely solid, and I
Yeah.
think that is from the direction and what it has. I think more than other movies of this kind are the maybe the I don't know if they're deeper characters, but they're definitely more well-rounded characters.
Yeah, I think just defined was a good word when you said that about Vince, because there's a good handful of characters where you just get a sense of who they are like quite well.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll waste any more time trying to dodge around plot. We'll give the spoiler warning, and we'll go into it. So full spoilers from this point on for the Big Heat. So So yeah, I really like the opening scene of this movie actually,
Mm.
because the movie opens in a shot of a gun,
Yeah.
and then we see the hand come in and it picks it up, and we hear a bang, and then the guy falls into frame. It's the suicide of the detective Duncan is his name,
Yes.
and we see his wife come down, and she like sees what's just happened, and she's standing next to this big grandfather clock.
Mm.
And I just really like this. I like this image, and it's just this like his time is up kind of thing, and the clock's
Yeah.
right next to her head. It's just very neatly done,
Mm.
and it really sets you in for the mood of the movie, where there's going to be like death. And it's a lot of it's going to be about the end, and obviously the other big theme in the movie is money. Money's a huge theme in this film. Everyone's talking about money constantly,
Yeah.
right down to the fact that at one point when Banyan goes to get like a drink at there's this place where all the bad guys typically are hanging out called the Retreat, and when he goes to get a drink he asks for a beer, and this happens a couple of times, and both times you hear the waiter or whoever say the price of the beer. How often does that happen in movies? It very rarely does.
Yeah, almost never. They're just like a beer and then just pay, and that's it.
And the first time I didn't think much of it, but it was the second time when I heard it again, I'm like, wait a minute, they're really making a point of like pointing out just the actual price of what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's a small thing, but it really adds into this theme of the movie, because everything revolves around money. The reason why people are working with the bad guys is because of money. They're worried about the pension. They talk about the lieutenant's pension, that he's worried about not ruffling feathers because he's 2 years from retirement, and he's worried that he's not going to lose his pension. And even like Banyan and his wife, when they're having steak, he's like, oh well, daughter's going to be starting school now. We're going to have to cut back on the steak.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. And, Vince's girlfriend loves to spend his money, and that's why she puts up with how much of an asshole he is. Like, throughout the movie, money and the corruption of money is like a big, big theme. It plays
Yeah,
throughout
it's
the
pretty
whole
much
thing.
what the whole film is.
Yeah. And how heartless people can be when that's all they care about, and that's kind of what leads. So they build Banyan and his wife and their relationship really well. Like there's a couple of scenes with them where she's like stealing drinks of his food and taking food off of him, and it's like, but it's always jovial. It's always like returning back and forth, and they're always very, very energetically together. Like, there's never any like lulls or like, oh, they're going to be nagging at each other because they're husband and wife. No, they're very happy.
Yeah, almost to a fault where he brings it up. She takes some of his drink, and he talks about how, oh, that's why we're such a perfect couple, because we like all the same things and we share all the same foods and drinks.
Yeah, but
And
there's a hint of sarcasm in his voice.
there is a hint of sarcasm. There is, but it's so like you kind of just get it from seeing it that I'm not sure it was necessarily needed.
Okay, maybe the dialogue's a bit much, but I think it did a really good job of making us like her. And she's only got a couple of scenes, but it very, very quickly makes you like her. And you see a little bit of the daughter as well, but the daughter, as with most kids in movies, you don't have to really get to know the kid to understand the threat of
And
the
and
kid.
they
being
literally
killed.
kind of just shuffle her off as well.
Yeah. But so it really sets up that we like her, which is why I'm like, all right, okay, something bad's going to, because he keeps ruffling feathers, as I say, and at one point they threaten him, but something bad's going to happen to his family. I was thinking it was both his wife and kid.
That would have been more normal, like what you expect to think by now.
But of course, someone's planted a bomb in his car, and it goes off, and she goes into the car, and it's her that dies, and it raises the stakes. This is like a good. I mean, realistically, it's the end of Act 1. It's like raising the stakes for why he's got a mission for the rest of the movie, but it really sets up his determination for the rest of the film, and why he really does feel like he's a. Like, because he even hands in his badge, like, because it cuts time a little bit, and we see the police chief, like, sits down with him, like, we're all in this case, everyone's going to look into all your old case files, because it's probably revenge, and he's sitting there going, no, it's not revenge, this is the case
This
I was
is what
working
I was
on.
into, yeah.
Yeah, this is the exact thing that was just going on, but you're trying to cover it up, and he accuses him as much, and he makes him hand in his badge, but I think because we liked the wife so much, that we care about her, probably more than we do him, to be honest, because he's very typical.
He's very
cop.
much your straight edge cop that you see in these movies.
Yeah, so she kind of becomes the heart, and because she gets taken away, I think when he does go off the books and he does start investigating on his own, and he is roughing people up, you're never like, oh, this is A, uncalled for, or B, too far. You never feel like he's crossing some sort of line. There's one moment where he does almost, but Very much, you're with him on his plight to find who's responsible
Yeah,
for
I think
this.
it's especially noble though because obviously we see the things that Vince does, and it's like which is so far over the line that it makes Banyan seem tame in comparison,
Oh
which
yeah,
he is obviously.
oh yeah, because like the girl who gives him the hint that it wasn't a suicide, or at least if it was a suicide, that there's more to it. Like she winds up dead like the next day. Like people,
Yeah,
she just turns up dead, and then once she starts looking into things, and there's all these hints when she got like burns from a cigar or whatever on her body, and we see Vince do that to like a girl because he gets angry at her at the bar, and like he intervenes, but it's like, oh wait, so he was at the forefront of this,
yeah,
like he was involved that night or whatever, and it keeps sort of building, and you know that when his girl, what was her name, Debbie,
Debbie.
when because she's at the bar, and and that's another thing the movie does as well. Much like it introduced the wife, it introduces her for a couple of scenes before she really comes into the plot, because she doesn't really come into the plot until halfway through.
Yeah,
Because the first couple of times we see her, she's at Vince's house, and we see that she's quite bubbly and she's quite nice, but it's more at odds with Vince, who's domineering and like, go
yeah,
get a drink, shut the door, don't listen to my phone calls.
yeah. Those first few scenes are all just in relation to Vince and setting him up, but just showing us that she's around.
But I think she's so bubbly though, you could almost see her swapping places with Katie, with Banyan's wife.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I know what you mean.
she's almost like just as nice a person, but she has went down this path. She's ended up with this guy, and she justifies it to herself several times in the movie by saying, "Oh, I get nice clothes and money and cars. I can go shopping 6 days a week, and
Yeah,
it's great." But again, it's like fueled by money rather than fueled by love, I guess, and motherhood and whatever.
yeah,
What other sort of cheesy, cliched words you want to throw in there? But but they introduce her. They properly give her a couple of these scenes. So when she pops up in the scene where Vince hits this other girl and Banyan steps in, she runs after Banyan after he leaves the club, and she goes up to his hotel room, and it's very dubious. Like, you don't know, like, why is she there? Does she have one night stands with like other men? Is this something she does? And obviously, from Banyan's point of view, we're thinking, right, he's wanting information. He's like, right, she might actually give me something, because everyone else, like, it doesn't matter who he goes to, they're all hush hush. Like,
yeah.
we're not talking about this. And he tries to get some information, and it doesn't really work. But you feel honestly in that scene, because we see that Vince's lackey, the Larry, he sees her going off with him. So I was actually kind of worried through this entire scene. Like, I got that feeling that, oh, something bad is going to happen to her.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's when she goes back to the house, and Vince casually tries to like bring things up, and we see the police chief's there, like he's at the poker game,
Yep.
and so it's all set up, and he's like, all right, deal me out, fellas, and he goes off to the other room with her, and he starts asking questions, and you know that his fuse is going to go. Like, he's playing nice, he's being very suave, he's doing everything that he's supposed to do to act normal.
But you're just waiting for the switch to flip.
Yeah, and you don't know exactly what he's going to do, but he grabs up the hot coffee and throws it in her face. Yeah, well, actually, he grabs her arm first. There's a lot of screaming first, but that's what he does. That's the culmination of this scene, which scars her. And what I like about how it treats that, because you talked about the horror in the movie, I think that's actually one of the biggest parts of the horror, is that after this scene, she has this big bandage, like, covering her face, the whole thing. And it reminded me a lot of something like Eyes Without a Face, or like even like not Frankenstein, but like classic disfigurement, like monster movies, where they don't reveal it until the end of the movie.
Yeah, even something down like The Invisible Man.
Yeah,
which is a bit different, but obviously the same sort of idea of hiding it.
Yeah, because she hides it for most of the movie, and I didn't think there was any reason that they had to show us it necessarily, because it's grim on its own. It's like
yeah, we know what's under there. We know what hot coffee does to a face.
Yeah, I mean, look at Connor's face.
Very good. Okay, I brought that one on myself. I'll allow that.
Nah, it's more like orange juice that's at your face. But so at the end of the movie, because she eventually, because basically the reason why when the Detective Duncan killed himself, Mrs. Duncan, I got a letter that he'd write his suicide note that like had all these like facts and things about the crime syndicate, and like it put all them in prison. She has that in a safe, and she's extorting money. Like, even she doesn't care that her husband died, because she gets to extort money from the mob.
Joe, that's something that when she discovers this immediately, she's not distraught. She doesn't phone the police straight away. You know, like her reaction is very odd.
Oh, because she phones the crime boss, the mayor guy. She phones
Yeah,
him.
and says it's Duncan's widow. She that like just immediately introduces herself as that. That's it. Like she's already like addressing herself as that.
Yeah, yeah. But we have all this, and Banyan almost kills her because he knows that if she dies, then everything she has hidden will come out,
Mm.
and that'll like, almost like get everyone who is supposed to go behind bars, and he almost does it, but he holds himself up. Admittedly, some police show up as well because at the same time, but he does pull himself off, and he explains all this to Debbie, who he's got hiding in a hotel because she's hiding from Vince and everyone else. So it's actually Debbie who. So it gets really exciting at the end of the movie because two things kind of happen. One, we know his daughter's at risk because
Yeah.
the police escort that's outside his in-laws' house that are guarding his daughter stops going. The police chief has called them off, and he runs over, and we find out that his brother-in-law has actually got like some army buddies round, and she's pretty safe. But then his lieutenant kind of redeems himself a little bit because he shows up even though it's off the books to like
Yeah.
someone should be here and whatever, and he redeems himself a little bit because he's not just an outright criminal, and that's fine. But we see Debbie go to Mrs. Duncan's house, and she shoots her.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting scene, and that's fine, and you get why she's doing it. She's doing it because she's solving the problem. If she does this, and she's already pointed out that Banyan's too good of a man, he's better than Vince, he wouldn't do this. Yeah. But she's already went down this rabbit hole. She's made her life choices. She's doing it. But when Vince comes home to his apartment, I have to admit I was not expecting that flying hot coffee coming just from off the frame. It just comes out of nowhere.
It does just come out of nowhere, and it almost like makes you jump because you don't see it coming. It's just that's there.
Yeah, because he goes over to the light switch. He's about to flick on the light, and you just see this hot coffee just come flying at his face, and he starts burning. And I was almost thinking it was going to be Banyan who steps out, and it was him that was here. And this, because he knew what had happened to her, so he could be the one doing this, but it's her. Like, she's taking everything into her own hands. She's taking control.
Yeah. She's
not letting the money dictate her character anymore.
She's kind of the real hero of the movie.
Almost. She's because even as she says earlier on, she's turning a different eye to everything. She doesn't stay in the room when he's talking business. She's happy to have the money.
Yeah.
And she's letting money dictate who she is. And then at the end of the movie, once he turns on her and she goes through this metamorphosis, she comes back and she's like, I'm not letting it dictate who I am. I'm solving this. I'm going to fight back. You're burned. Haha. And that's when she rips off the bandage and we see her burned face, all the scarring. She's like, this is what you're going to look like. Not that it'll last long because they're coming for you. Obviously, Vince shoots her and she dies. But and that's basically the end of the movie. Is like, the cops run in and Banyan's there and he gives chase to Vince because Vince tries to run off, but he grabs him and he is going to kill him, but he holds back at the last second. And again, it's kind of his character not wanting to cross that line. Like, I am better than you, and I have to kind of prove that to myself.
Yeah, and which is why it's interesting that I feel like that she is kind of the hero. She does the things that has to be done in order to succeed and get the victory, whereas he is the moral hero. But if she hadn't been doing what she did, he would have lost ultimately.
He would have lost, but I don't think it's like she is the hero. She's the, how do I phrase this? She is the Catwoman to his Batman.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Where she will go outside the rules because she's already crossed that line. And I don't think, I mean, that's the example that comes to mind, but I think you see this repeatedly in fiction. I think you see you'll have the character who's outside on the fringe, who can do the things that the moral hero won't do, and in this case it solves everything. And like we have no idea how it would have went down had it not.
We don't.
But she goes on this kind of destructive past, even though the result is heroic. It is very destructive. She doesn't really care about her own well-being. Like, she gets herself shot, and it's not like it's not like she's expecting to be shot. She's kind of stupid about it, really. She's just kind of standing there. Of course he's going to want to shoot you. He's already burned your face off. He's clearly unstable. He's going to do something.
You probably could have moved out of the way.
But I don't think she cared.
No, she didn't.
She's been reckless, and I think that's like again, this is why I think the movie's strongest suits are its characters, because I think Vince, I think Banyan to a lesser extent, and his wife, but they're all so well defined, and they all have clear arcs, they have clear goals, Well, Banyan's
Yeah.
wife doesn't have an arc. She has the
She
start
has a
of an arc,
purpose.
and she dies. But there's arcs there, and there's growth, and you understand why she's doing what she's doing, and she has flipped, and she's out with that money control. Same with the lieutenant. Like, he's out of that money control because he makes the choice. No, I care about being a good person and protecting that little girl instead of staying and just getting my pension safely. But good ultimately prevails because Banyan gets his badge back. He goes back to work, and
Yeah, he's the sergeant. I mean, he'll probably get that promotion at some point.
I don't know if he will, because as the lieutenant points out, he's not that type of guy. He says the reason why he's had his job for so long is because he's happy not to step on toes, whereas Banyan's a natural toe stepper. That wasn't the exact phrase he used, but that was the gist of it.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I feel like ultimately, eventually, he would. That's kind of where the movie has pushed him to grow to that point where he did take things into his own hands and he followed it, and he ultimately did step on the toes of like the commissioner and all the others to do what he thought was right. So I think ultimately that puts him in a place to become that.
What, you mean the lieutenant?
Yeah. Sorry, Lieutenant.
Yeah. I thought you started that sentence talking about Banyan, and then I got more confused.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but even the chief though, because the chief's at the poker game. When he hears Debbie like screaming out in pain, he's like ready to get up. He's like, "This isn't right." Like, it's almost like, again, much like she was. If I'm not looking at where the money's coming from, and I'm not looking at the bad things that are happening to make my life comfortable, it's okay. But the minute he's confronted with it, it's like, no, I need to get up out of this seat and do something. And he tries to confront Vince. He doesn't really get very far with it, but he tries.
He tries, but it's not. It's kind of half-hearted, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but the point is, though, is he gets up. That's the whole point. Much like her, that's the entire point of the movie, is that once you actually see the people that are hurting to get you your lifestyle and your money, you should do something. You should make the choice not to be that way.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
No, I thought it was quite tight. I don't think there's like in terms of pacing, I think it's quite well. It flows really nicely.
Oh yeah, it didn't drag. If anything, it may have even went a wee bit too quick in places.
Yeah, I feel like the point where that you'd add more for me would be, where you have the time jump after the wife dies and and it comes back after the funeral. Maybe just a scene to show his grief. Something in there.
That said, though, I did really like how he wouldn't talk about her to Debbie, and at the end when she was dying, he did because she wanted to hear something nice, and it was almost like, again, comparing them to and her being just going on a different path and saying they're similar. I think her listening to him talk about his wife was for her like, I want to hear how my life could have been, like, had I not made the wrong choices. I want to hear about something like that, something that's happy before I die.
And it's nice that obviously he knows that she's dying, and that's why he opens up and says this. And it's like, okay, you deserve this for what you did, like, almost.
I'm very happy that they kept the relationship platonic, because I was a little bit worried, because sometimes movies of this era, you'll have characters like him who will just instantly fall in love with the new person immediately. It always feels a bit off to me, so I was glad they didn't go down that path.
Yeah, that would have felt especially cheap in this movie, given that everything was for him revolved around his wife.
Yeah, especially since we liked his wife so much, they went through so much effort to make us care about his wife.
They did.
That to do anything like that in the second half would have probably felt like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
And it would have soured the whole thing, so I think...
And it would have ultimately made him less of a hero.
It would have, yeah.
So I'm glad they didn't do that, yeah.
Do you know what, I kind of like that, as much as we're using the word hero, right? I like that it's not necessarily a hero, it's just not being an asshole, almost.
Yeah, he does the right thing. He does his job, basically.
He does his job. Like, everyone else is willing to not do their job for money. And he's like, no, I'm a goddamn detective, I'm going to do my job.
Yeah, ultimately, he doesn't actually do anything that heroic other than do his job.
Well, it goes back to that old saying, isn't it? The only thing it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to stand by and do nothing. It's like, he's the one who's willing to not just stand by and do nothing. It's not
exactly.
It's not like he goes above and beyond. He's just
the old, by comparison to everyone else, he is so far above that he is automatically heroic.
Yeah. But, everything kind of shakes everyone up, because, like I say, the lieutenant kind of comes out when he realised the little girl's in trouble. I can't let this be. The police chief sees Debbie in pain and being hurt. I can't just sit here and let this happen. Even after Larry tries to stop him, he hears a second scream and he's like, no, I'm getting up. Like, and it's that. I think that's, don't be a slave to money. I think is.
That's clearly the message of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, money breeds corruption and fear, and don't let it. You control the money; it doesn't control you. I think that's the ultimate message of the movie for me. There you go. That's probably one of the quickest ones we've done, but
it's because I think you'll probably find that we do that a lot with things of this era, especially noirs, where they're very straightforward in terms of they all kind of have a similar sort of plot. Yeah, it's how well do they execute it at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the cast is good. Direction is good. I mentioned the opening scene, but there was a lot of good, nice little things. Obviously, it's from an era where there wasn't as flashier filmmaking going on, but there's definitely a lot of very, very simple techniques. The way the clock comes back into it whenever you go back to the house from the start of the movie, it's like a sort of running theme that plays throughout. We start off again with a shot of the gun when he goes to Larry's house, which again very very neat and thematic. There's like these bullet points that it keeps coming back to throughout the film.
It's very confident in what it's doing. It always knows exactly what it's pointing at and why it is doing that.
Yeah. So no, that's the big heat. So I guess we're on ratings.
Yeah, I guess we are.
All right. Well, what would you rate the big heat out of 10?
A solid 7.
Solid 7. I think I'll go a nudge higher. I think I will. I think I'll go as high as an 8. I think I'll go with a solid 8. I think, yeah, it's not the best Fritz Lang film. I think M is much more haunting, which is maybe what this is missing. This feels a bit more like a typical noir in that sense.
Yeah.
But it does have some great characters, great motivations, and I like the message. And there is depth to it. There's depth to the story, because we've just spoken about all the messages that are in there.
Yeah.
So, no, I would recommend checking it out. Although it's definitely not my highest Lang or noir sort of movie.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure we'll cover some more of both of those down the line. But no, let us know what you think of the big heat in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, helps out a lot. Get us on Twitter at mail_fuzz for channel updates. Get our individual Twitters. I'm at Wibble89, Connor's at ConnorRyan94 for everyday ramblings. But that's us, guys, so keep watching movies and we'll see you next time.